I put a padlock on my own refrigerator in my own house. Not to keep thieves out, to keep my wife from eating. She was allowed to cook. She was allowed to serve. She was allowed to wash the dishes. But she was not allowed to eat until I said so. For 3 years, my wife lived like a servant in the home she built with me. While 15 minutes away, my mistress was choosing between steak and lobster for dinner. I controlled everything: the food, the money, the silence. I thought starvation would break her. I didn't know it was building something inside her that would destroy me. Zola Mwangi was not born cruel. He was born hungry. He grew up in a 2-room house on the outskirts of Enugu, the kind of house where the ceiling leaked during Harmattan and the walls sweated during rainy season. His mother sold akara on the roadside. His father drove Okada until his knees gave out. Zola watched his parents grind themselves into dust and swore he would never be poor again. That hunger, that deep, bone-level fear of having nothing, became the engine of everything he did. And eventually, it became the engine of everything he destroyed. He met Adar Obi when he was 24, and she was 22. She was working as a pharmacy assistant in a small dispensary on Ogwi Road. Zola had come in to buy malaria tablets and left with her phone number. She was not the prettiest girl in Enugu. She would have told you that herself. But she had something that Zola recognized immediately. She was steady, calm, the kind of woman who could look at a problem and not flinch. Within 3 months, they were inseparable. Within a year, they were married in a small traditional ceremony that Ador's father paid for because Zola could not afford it. What Zola could afford was ambition. He had been saving money from his work as a delivery driver for a pharmaceutical warehouse. He understood the supply chain, which drugs moved fast, which suppliers gave credit, which hospitals paid on time. He wanted to start his own distribution company. The problem was capital. He needed 4 million naira to lease a small warehouse and make his first bulk order. He had 800,000. It was Ador who went to her father. Chief Obi was a retired schoolteacher who had saved carefully his entire life. He did not trust Zola completely. He told his daughter that openly, but he trusted her. He gave her the 4 million naira as a loan against the family land, with the understanding that Zola would repay it within 3 years. Adar signed the warehouse lease because Zola's credit history was too thin. Her name went on the company registration as co-signatory. She did not think twice about it. She believed in him the way only someone who has never been betrayed can believe. And for the first 2 years, that belief was rewarded. Zola worked 18-hour days. Adar handled the books, managed the suppliers, and still cooked every meal. When shipments arrived late, she was the one on the phone with the logistics company at midnight. When a hospital in Nasuka delayed payment for 3 months, she drove there herself and sat in the administrator's office until the check was signed. Zola saw this and said nothing. Not thank you, not well done. He simply expected it the way a man expects the sun to rise. The business grew. They moved from their rented 1-bedroom into a proper house in Independence layout. Not a mansion, but solid. 3 bedrooms, a gated compound, a kitchen with tiles instead of cement. Ador's father came to visit and smiled for the first time since giving them the money. He pulled his daughter aside and said, "You chose well, my daughter." Ador smiled and said nothing. She was already beginning to notice things, the way Zola counted her spending, the way he checked the mileage on the car after she went to the market, the way he asked who she had spoken to on the phone. Small things, the kind of things you explain away until you cannot explain them anymore. Things were good on the surface. Zola was becoming the man he had always wanted to be. But becoming was not the same as being, and somewhere inside the man who had grown up hungry, something shifted. The more money he made, the more he needed to feel in control. Not of the business, of everything. He started monitoring what Adore bought at the market. He questioned every 200 naira. He stopped giving her a monthly allowance and switched to a system where she had to ask him for money each time she needed anything. Soap, cooking gas, sanitary pads. He called it financial discipline. It was not discipline, it was the beginning of a cage. The padlock appeared on a Tuesday. Adore came into the kitchen that morning to prepare breakfast and found a heavy brass padlock hanging from the refrigerator handle. She thought it was a mistake. She called Zola, who was already in his car. He answered without looking at the road. "I put it there," he said. "Why?" "Because you are wasting food. I checked the fridge last night, and the chicken I bought on Saturday is already finished. From now on, I will decide what you cook and when you cook it. You will ask me before you open that fridge." Adore stood in the kitchen, holding her phone, and said nothing for a long time. The chicken had been finished because she had cooked it for Zola's friends who came to watch football on Sunday, at his invitation. But she did not say that. She had learned that correcting Zola with facts only made him angrier. The padlock became the law of the house. Every morning, Zola unlocked the fridge, removed what he wanted Adore to cook that day, and locked it again. She cooked breakfast, yam porridge, fried plantains, fresh orange juice, and served it at the dining table. She was not permitted to sit at the table. She stood by the wall near the kitchen door while he ate. After he left for work, she was allowed to eat whatever remained in the pot. Sometimes that was a full portion. Sometimes it was the burnt crust at the bottom of the rice. Sometimes, when Zola had been generous with his own serving, there was nothing at all. She could not go to the market without his permission. She had no money of her own. The phone he gave her was an old Nokia with only his number saved. He had deleted even the emergency contacts. Her clothes were 2 years old, 3 dresses and 2 wrappers that she rotated through the week. She washed them by hand at night and hung them inside the bathroom so he would not see them drying and complain about the compound looking untidy. Her shoes had holes she covered with cardboard. She moved through the house like a shadow, quiet, thin, precise. And Zola watched her shrink. He watched the way her collarbone became more visible each month, the way her wedding ring began to slide on her finger because her hands had become so thin. He watched all of this and felt something that disturbed him when he thought about it honestly. He felt satisfied. He felt powerful. He felt like a man who had finally tamed something wild. He met Serwa at a pharmaceutical trade expo in Accra. She was Ghanaian, tall, sharp-featured, with the kind of confidence that announced itself before she spoke. She worked for a medical equipment supplier and had been assigned to the Medigana booth. Zola approached her about a bulk deal on syringes and left the expo with a different kind of deal entirely. Within 2 months, Serwa was living in a rented flat in GRA Enugu. Zola paid the rent, 600,000 naira a year. He furnished it with things he had never bought for his own home. Italian leather sofa, flat-screen television, a refrigerator, unlocked, fully stocked, overflowing with fruit and wine and imported cheese that Serwa liked to eat in the evenings while watching Nollywood films. Every Saturday, Zola took Serwa grocery shopping at ShopRite. He pushed the trolley while she filled it. Perfume, hair products, chocolate, frozen prawns. He paid without flinching. He bought her a gold chain from a jeweler on the mainland, during a business trip to Lagos. 1.2 million naira. He kept the receipt in his trouser pocket like a trophy. Serwa knew about Adore. Zola had told her early on, not out of honesty, but out of strategy. He framed Adore as a burden, a village wife he had married too young, a woman who could not keep up with his growth. Serwa accepted this version easily. She called Adora that skeleton once during dinner, and Zola laughed so hard he spilled his wine. It became their private joke. The skeleton in the house. The ghost who cooked. There was one evening, Zola remembered it later with a sickness he could not shake, when he sat in Serwa's flat eating jollof rice she had ordered from a restaurant, feeding her pieces of fried chicken from his fingers, while at the exact same hour, 15 minutes across the city, Adore was sitting on the kitchen floor, chewing a dry piece of bread because the pot she had cooked for his dinner had yielded nothing extra. She ate the bread slowly, making it last. She did not cry. She had stopped crying 11 months ago. The only person who saw what was happening was Mama Nkechi. She was an elderly widow who sold ground nuts and chin-chin near the gate of Zola's compound. She had been there for years, part of the landscape, easy to ignore. But Mama Nkechi had the kind of eyes that noticed weight loss before scales did. She watched Adara shrink over the months. The dresses that used to fit now hung like curtains. The arms that once carried market baskets with ease now trembled, lifting a broom. One afternoon, when Zola's car was gone and the compound was quiet, Mama Nkechi walked to the low fence and pushed a small plastic bag through the gap. Ground nuts and chin-chin. Adar picked up the bag and stared at it like it was a foreign object. "Eat, my daughter," Mama Nkechi whispered from the other side. "Eat now, while he is not here." Adar broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. She sat on the ground by the fence, pressed her back against the concrete wall, and cried in a way that made no sound, just tears running down a face that had forgotten how to ask for help. She ate the ground nuts one by one, slowly, the way a person eats when they have learned that food is not guaranteed. Each one felt like a gift she did not deserve. Mama Nkechi reached her hand through the fence and held Ador's fingers. They stayed like that for 15 minutes, an old woman and a young woman, separated by a concrete wall, connected by the simple act of one human being refusing to look away from another's suffering. When Adar finally spoke, her voice was barely there. "Mama, he locks the food. He locks it." Mama Nkechi was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that Ador would carry with her like a stone in her chest for the next several months. "My daughter, the tortoise does not run from the trap. It waits until the hunter sleeps." The receipts changed everything. Ador found them on a Wednesday while washing Zola's trousers before putting them in the machine. 2 folded pieces of paper in his back pocket. The first was from a jeweler in Lagos, a gold necklace, 1.2 million naira. The second was a medical bill from a private fertility clinic in Enugu. The patient name was Serwa Mensa. The procedures listed were ovulation tracking and hormone therapy. Adar held those 2 receipts and felt something reorganize itself inside her body. It was not anger. Anger had come and gone many times. This was different. This was clarity. Zola was not just starving her. He was not just humiliating her. He was building a future, a family, a legacy, with another woman. Using the business that Ador had helped create. Using money that flowed through accounts that bore her signature. She did not confront him. She did not cry. She folded the receipts back into his pocket exactly as she had found them. Then she went to the small storeroom at the back of the house where Zola kept old electronics, broken chargers, dead phones, tangled cables. She found his backup phone, a small Android he had abandoned 2 years ago. She had been charging it secretly for 3 weeks, using the socket behind the water heater that Zola never checked. The phone worked. It had no SIM card, but it connected to the neighbor's unsecured Wi-Fi. She photographed both receipts. Then she returned them to his pocket, finished the laundry, and began cooking his dinner with the same steady hands she always used. Zola hosted a dinner party on a Saturday evening. 4 business associates and their wives. He wanted to impress them. A new contract with a government hospital was on the table, and these were the men who could make it happen. Adar cooked for 8 people, egusi soup, pepper soup with goat meat, jollof rice, fried fish, pounded yam, and chilled zobo. She worked for 6 hours. The kitchen was a furnace. Her hands moved automatically, chopping, stirring, seasoning, while her body ran on the bread and ground nuts Mama and Kichi had passed through the fence that morning. She served every plate herself, moving between the dining room and kitchen with the precision of someone who had been practicing servitude for years. One of the guests, a man named Dr. Emeka, watched her carry a heavy tray of pounded yam and said to Zola, "Your wife is a wonderful cook. You are a lucky man." Zola smiled thinly and changed the subject. When one of the wives asked Zola where his wife was sitting, he smiled and gestured toward the kitchen. "That is Adora. She is the housekeeper." He said it casually, like introducing a piece of furniture. The wife, a woman named Chidinma, looked at Ador's thin frame, her worn dress, and then back at Zola. Something passed across her face. Zola caught it. "Do not mind her," he said, louder now, addressing the table. "She has always been small. Some women are just like that. They do not gain no matter how much they eat." He laughed. 2 of the men laughed with him. Chidinma did not laugh. Neither did her husband. After the guests left, Adar cleaned the dining room, washed every dish, and swept the kitchen floor. The leftover food, enough to feed her for 3 days, sat in serving bowls on the counter. Zola walked into the kitchen, transferred everything into the fridge, clicked the padlock shut, and went to bed. Ador cleaned the empty counter at midnight on a stomach that had not received food since a piece of boiled yam at 7 that morning. That night, she did not sleep. She sat in the dark kitchen with the old phone and began typing a message. Her brother Chukwuemeka was in Lagos, 26 years old, sharp, recently qualified from the Nigerian law school. He was working at a mid-level firm in Victoria Island, doing contract reviews and property disputes. He was not rich, he was not powerful, but he was precise, and he loved his sister with the kind of loyalty that does not require explanation. Ador's message was short. She told him everything: the padlock, the starvation, the mistress, the fertility clinic, the dinner party, the word housekeeper. Chukwuemeka read it at 2 in the morning and did not sleep for the rest of the night. He called her the next day during Zola's work hours. "I am coming to Enugu. I will take you out of there." "No," Adar said. Her voice was calm, frighteningly calm. "I do not need your anger, Chukwuemeka. I need your brain." He understood. Within a week, he had connected Adara with Barrister Ngozi Okafor, a senior lawyer in Abuja who specialized in matrimonial property rights and financial abuse cases. Ngozi had handled similar cases before. She knew the law. She also knew the courts. She told Chukwuemeka, "If your sister has documentation, she has a case. If she has patience, she has a victory." Adar had both. Over the next 2 months, Adar became 2 people. The first was the woman Zola saw every day, Thin, quiet, obedient, cooking his meals, standing by the wall, cleaning his house, saying yes, sir, and no, sir, and nothing else. The second was the woman who existed only after midnight, and during the hours Zola was at work. This woman was methodical. She was patient. She was building a file that would dismantle Zola's entire life. She photographed the padlock on the fridge every single day. Different angles, different times. Each photo automatically time-stamped by the phone. She photographed bank statements Zola left carelessly on his desk, transfers to Serwa's account, rent payments for the GRA flat, shopping receipts. She photographed the company registration documents stored in his filing cabinet. Her name was still there. Co-signatory, director, the original warehouse lease, signed by her, not Zola. Her father's 4 million naira loan, never repaid. She photographed herself. This was the hardest part. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror and documented what 3 years of controlled starvation had done to her body. The visible ribs, the hollowed cheeks, the arms that looked like they belonged to a woman 20 years older. She took these photographs with steady hands and dry eyes and a jaw set so tight it could have cut glass. Every Thursday, she sealed everything into a brown envelope and passed it to Mama Nkechi through the fence. Mama Nkechi carried it to her daughter's house, where Chukwuemeka's courier picked it up and delivered it to Barrister Ngozi in Abuja. The chain was invisible. Zola saw the same quiet wife, the same clean house, the same food on his plate. He had no idea that the woman standing by his kitchen wall was quietly loading a weapon that had no sound and no mercy. Serwa's pregnancy was now showing. She was 5 months along, and she had begun pressuring Zola for a commitment he had been avoiding. Marriage, or at minimum, cohabitation. She wanted to move into the main house. She was tired of the rented flat. She wanted legitimacy. She wanted a ring. She wanted Adore gone. Zola, drunk on his own power, began preparing. He told Adore to clean the guest room thoroughly. He did not say why. Over the following week, bags of women's clothing appeared in the guest room. Silk robes, expensive dresses, perfume bottles. Adore unpacked them and arranged them neatly in the wardrobe as instructed. One evening, she held a silk robe against her own body, her worn, faded wrapper against the smooth, imported fabric. The contrast was so violent it was almost funny. Almost. Then Zola brought Serwa to the house. He did it on a Sunday afternoon without warning. He walked through the front door with Serwa beside him, glowing, pregnant, wearing the gold necklace, and called Adora from the kitchen. "This is Serwa," he said. "She will be staying with us. You will cook for both of us from now on. And prepare the guest room properly. She will need extra pillows." Serwa looked at Adore the way someone looks at an old piece of furniture they plan to replace. She said nothing. She did not need to. Her presence said everything. Adore nodded once and returned to the kitchen. That evening, she prepared dinner for 2. Zola and Serwa ate at the dining table, while Adore stood in her usual position by the wall. Serwa ate slowly, looking around the house with the eyes of someone already rearranging the furniture in her mind. She pointed at the curtains and told Zola they were ugly. She said the tiles in the hallway needed replacing. She spoke about the house as if it were already hers. Adore listened to every word and said nothing. Then Serwa tasted the soup and made a face. "It is too salty," she said. She pushed the bowl forward on the table like a customer rejecting a meal at a restaurant. Zola stood up, walked to the kitchen, and slapped the pot off the stove. Soup splattered across the floor and the wall. The sound of the pot hitting the tiles echoed through the house. "Make it again," he said. His voice was flat. Not angry, worse than angry, indifferent. The voice of a man who had stopped seeing his wife as a person so long ago that cruelty had become routine. Adore cleaned the floor, cleaned the wall, and made the soup again. She did not look at either of them. She did not need to. She had already photographed everything she needed. Serwa's presence in the house, the clothes in the guest room, the gold necklace around her neck. Every piece of evidence was already in Abuja. That night, Zola called his friend from his bedroom and said something that he would repeat to himself in the months that followed, tasting the bitterness of it each time. A man who controls his house controls the world. The last meal Adore ever cooked in that house was egusi soup with pounded yam. She made it on a Thursday evening. She made it with extraordinary care. The egusi ground fine, the stockfish soaked properly, the spinach fresh from the market that Mama Nkechi had bought for her. She ground the crayfish by hand instead of using the blender. She added the palm oil slowly, watching the color shift in the pot from pale to deep orange. It was the best meal she had ever cooked. She knew it would be. She set the table for two. She served Zola and Serwa. She stood in the corner. Zola ate slowly. He nodded. The food was perfect. He even looked up from his plate and said, "This one is good." It was the closest thing to a compliment he had given her in 3 years. He did not notice that Adore was wearing her good dress, the white and blue Ankara she had worn to their traditional wedding 4 years ago. It hung loose on her frame now, the fabric pooling where her body used to fill it. He did not notice that her small bag was packed and sitting by the back door. He did not notice that Mama Nkechi's grandson was parked outside the gate on a motorcycle, engine idling. He did not notice because he had spent 3 years training himself not to see her. And now, on the one night it mattered, his blindness was complete. When Zola finished eating, Adore stepped forward. She stood at the edge of the dining table, the table she had never been allowed to sit at, and spoke. "I made this food with everything I have left. It is the last thing I will give you." Zola looked up. He almost laughed. "Where are you going? You have nothing. You are nothing." Adore held his gaze for 3 seconds. It was the longest she had looked directly at him in 2 years. Then she turned, walked through the kitchen, picked up her bag from beside the back door, stepped outside, climbed onto the motorcycle, and was gone. No shouting, no tears, no slamming doors, just the sound of a motorcycle pulling away into the Enugu evening. Serwa looked at Zola across the table. "Good," she said. "Finally." Zola said nothing. Something in the silence Adore left behind felt wrong to him. Not because she was gone, he had wanted that, but because of the way she left. There was no desperation, no begging, no fight. She left the way someone leaves a place they have already finished with. And that calm terrified him in a way he could not explain. The first letter arrived 3 days later, a legal notice, hand-delivered to Zola's office at the warehouse by a court bailiff. Barrister Ngozi Okafor had filed a petition in the Enugu State High Court on behalf of Adore Obi Mwangi. The petition requested a forensic audit of Zola's pharmaceutical distribution company. The grounds were specific and devastating. Adore's co-signatory status on the company's CAC registration, her name on the original warehouse lease, her father's 4 million Naira seed investment, which had never been documented as repaid, and suspected diversion of marital assets to a third party. The court froze Zola's business accounts the following Monday. All of them. Operating accounts, savings, the account he used to pay Serwa's rent. Everything. Zola sat in his office staring at the letter and felt something crack inside his chest. He picked up his phone and dialed Ador's number. The line was dead. The old Nokia had been left on the kitchen counter next to the padlock key. He called his lawyer, a man named Ezau, who handled his business contracts. Ezau read the petition and went quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Zola, who advised your wife?" "She does not have an advisor. She is a housewife. She does not know anything." This petition was filed by Ngozi Okafor. She is one of the most effective matrimonial lawyers in the country. Your wife knows everything. The evidence arrived at the court in a sealed file. Hundreds of photographs, time-stamped images of the padlocked refrigerator, morning, afternoon, evening, spanning months. Medical documentation from a confidential examination conducted through a clinic connected to Mama Nkechi's church. The results showed chronic malnutrition, vitamin deficiency, and early signs of anemia consistent with prolonged food deprivation. Bank records showing millions of naira transferred to Serwa Mensah's personal account over 3 years. Rent payments, jewelry purchases, medical bills, all drawn from the company accounts that bore Ador's name. There were also photographs of Ador herself, her body, the visible ribs, the wasted arms, the hollowed face. Beside them, photographs of Serwa taken from social media. Glowing, well-fed, wearing the gold necklace, posing in the GRA flat, furnished with money that was legally half Ador's. The judge assigned to the case was Justice Amara Ibe. She was known for being thorough and unhurried. She reviewed the evidence file in her chambers and, according to Zola's lawyer, did not speak for nearly a full minute after looking at the photographs of the padlocked fridge. When she finally spoke, she said only, "Schedule the preliminary hearing for next week and ensure the respondents' accounts remain frozen until the audit is complete." Zola's lawyer called him that evening. "This is catastrophic," he said. "The documentation is overwhelming. If this goes to full trial, you will lose more than money." The money stopped, and Serwa's love stopped with it. Zola came to the GRA flat one evening to find her packing. 2 suitcases open on the bed. Clothes folded with the efficiency of someone who had done this before. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I am leaving, Zola. What does it look like?" "Because of the court case? It is temporary. The accounts will be unfrozen. I will sort it out." Serwa stopped packing and looked at him. There was nothing in her eyes. No anger, no sadness, just calculation. The same calculation that had been there from the beginning, only now it was no longer dressed in perfume and soft words. "I did not sign up for a broke man, Zola. I have options. I have always had options." "And the baby?" Zola asked. His voice cracked on the word. "The baby will be fine. The baby has a mother who knows how to survive, which is more than I can say for his father." She took the gold necklace. She took the clothes. She took the car, a Toyota Camry he had bought for her 6 months ago. She drove out of the compound without looking back. She blocked his number before she reached the expressway. Zola stood in the empty flat. The Italian leather sofa was still there, the flat-screen television, the curtains, but the refrigerator door was hanging open. He walked over and looked inside. It was empty, completely, perfectly empty. The shelves that had been overflowing with fruit and wine and imported cheese were bare. The light inside buzzed softly in the silence. He stared at that empty refrigerator for a long time. The hum of the motor was the only sound in the flat. He reached out and touched one of the bare shelves. It was cold, clean, empty, the way his house would soon be empty. Empty, the way his accounts were empty. Empty, the way Ador's plate had been empty for 3 years, while he filled this one to overflowing. And somewhere in the back of his mind, in the place where honesty lives when a man is too broken to lie to himself, he understood exactly what he was looking at. The court proceedings took 4 months. Barrister Ngozi was surgical. She presented the evidence in sequence: the business formation, Ador's role, the seed capital, the padlock, the starvation, the mistress, the diversion of funds. Zola's lawyer attempted to argue that the company was Zola's intellectual property and that Adore had been a passive participant. Ngozi produced the warehouse lease with Adore's signature, the bank records showing her name on the operating accounts, and a sworn statement from Ador's father confirming the 4 million naira loan. The argument collapsed in 20 minutes. Justice Amara Aibo delivered her ruling on a Tuesday morning. The courtroom was half full, a few lawyers waiting for other cases, a clerk arranging files, Barrister Ngozi sitting with perfect posture in the front row. Ador was not present. She had asked Ngozi to represent her in absentia. She did not want to see Zola. She did not need to. Ador was awarded 60% of the business assets, based on her documented role as co-founder and the unreturned seed capital. Full ownership of the house in Independence Layout was transferred to Adora. The land had originally belonged to her father's family, and the title documents confirmed this. Zola was ordered to pay a substantial settlement for 3 years of documented domestic abuse, financial deprivation, and emotional cruelty. He was given 30 days to vacate the house. Zola sat in the courtroom and listened to the ruling being read. He did not argue. He did not shout. He sat perfectly still, the way Ador used to stand by the kitchen wall, and let the words wash over him like water over stone. When the judge finished, his lawyer touched his arm and said, "We can appeal." Zola shook his head. He knew what was in that evidence file. There was nothing to appeal. On his last day in the house, Zola walked through the rooms slowly. The bedroom where he had slept while Ador moved to the back room. The guest room where Serwa's silk robe had hung. The dining table where he had eaten thousands of meals alone while his wife stood against the wall. He ended in the kitchen. The refrigerator was there. The padlock was gone. In its place, sitting on the counter beside the fridge, was the padlock itself, open, unlocked, resting on top of a single piece of paper. Zola picked up the paper. The handwriting was Ador's, small, neat, the handwriting of a woman who had been careful about everything for years. It said, "I was never locked in. You were." He read it 4 times. Then he put it in his pocket, walked out of the house, and climbed into the taxi that was waiting to take him to a 1-bedroom apartment in a part of Enugu he used to drive past without looking. I live in that apartment now. It is small. The walls are thin enough to hear my neighbor's radio. The kitchen has a stove, a counter, and a fridge that nobody locks. I cook for myself most nights. Simple things, rice and stew, noodles when I am too tired to try. The food tastes like nothing. Everything tastes like nothing. I hear things. Through people, through the streets, through the way information moves in a city like Enugu, where everybody knows everybody's business. I hear that Adora is running the pharmaceutical business. She restructured it, renamed it, brought in new suppliers from both Nigeria and Ghana. It is growing, faster than it ever grew under me. I hear she hired Mama Nkechi's daughter as her office assistant. I hear she visits her brother in Lagos every month, and they eat at real restaurants, and laugh in ways I never heard her laugh in my house. I hear she is healthy now, full, strong, the kind of strong that does not need to announce itself, the kind of strong that was always there, waiting quietly in the kitchen, standing by the wall, surviving on scraps while building something I was too blind to see. Serwa had her baby, a boy. She is in Accra with a new man, someone in the oil industry, I am told. She has not contacted me since the day she left. The gold necklace is probably in a drawer somewhere, or sold. It does not matter. What matters is the padlock. I still have it. I keep it in the drawer beside my bed, and some nights, when the apartment is quiet and the city outside is asleep, I take it out and hold it. I feel its weight. I remember the click it made every morning when I locked that refrigerator. I remember the satisfaction I felt watching her shrink. I remember thinking I was building power. I was not building power. I was building a cage, and I was the one inside it. Adore knew this before I did. She knew it the day she photographed that padlock for the first time. She knew it the day she walked out the back door in her wedding dress. She knew it when she wrote those words on that piece of paper and left them on the counter for me to find. I was never locked in. You were. She was right. She was always right. And I will spend the rest of my life eating alone in this apartment, tasting nothing, remembering everything, knowing that the woman I starved for 3 years was the only person who ever truly fed me, with patience, with loyalty, with a love I was too hungry to recognize. I padlocked a refrigerator to keep a woman from eating, and in the end, I am the one who is starving. If this story stayed with you, if you felt something shift inside your chest, then subscribe to this channel, because the next story will break you even harder. And share this with someone who needs to hear it, because some lessons only hit when you watch someone else burn.